How is it possible to see differently? If everything you're doing right now is simply response grounded in your history, you have no control over what you're seeing or the decisions you make. How is it possible to see differently? And the answer is that it's a question. Seeing differently does not begin with answers, it begins with a question. All revolutions begin with a joke. You mean it could be different? What do questions actually do inside your head? If this is you, you're that red spot. What happens next? Now, all things are possible. There are only a few things that are possible given where you are now. What's next is determined by your assumptions. We call it your space of possibility, right? And we can represent the next possible according to size and proximity to where you are. If the best solution is that green dot at the top, you literally can't see it. It is not possible given your space of possibility. It falls outside your biases, your assumptions. What's possible is, say, this blue dot, right? Your brain never makes big jumps. It only ever makes small steps. And it steps to what the next most likely possible is given your history. And the shape of this structure is determined by your biases. Your assumptions come from your history. Everything you do is a consequence of your assumptions, which are ingrained in your brain. The functional structure of your brain represents these assumptions, these biases. Which means the only way I could ever see that green dot is by moving it and putting it, making it the next possible. So how can I change from this space of possibility to that one? It's by questioning my assumptions. And that's what questions do, right? They change what's possible. I'm going to show you how basic this is, even at the level of just seeing motion. So almost all of you will see this spinning from left to right. And that's because your brain has an assumption, that you're looking down onto that central surface. I want you to change that assumption, question it, and imagine looking up at that surface. You can mentally flip it. And at some point, it'll go in the opposite direction. If you blur your eyes, blink, and look around it, sometimes it helps. So who can get it to flip? Yes? Keep looking around it. We have a literalist. Keep looking around it, okay? And every time you blink, it's going to go in the opposite direction. All you're doing is changing your assumptions. When it's flipping one way, it's impossible to see it go the other way. But as soon as you change your biases, now that becomes the next possible, and the previous one becomes impossible. And so which direction is it actually rotating? Both, at the same time. How many people say it's spinning to the right? To the left? I don't care, right? What if I were to tell you that there's no motion on the screen at all? Nothing is actually moving. It's true. Nothing's actually moving. There's no motion. Yeah, you're looking at an animation. An animation is nothing but a series of still images that are slightly different from each other. Your brain is taking those small physical differences in stationary images and perceiving the meaning of that change as motion, right? Because that's what makes sense based on its history, right? If I made those changes less consistent with your history, you would just see a flickering, okay? So your brain is taking a series of still images, seeing them move, and changing it from one direction to the other depending on what your biases are, right? Which means that when it comes to creativity, it isn't this chaotic, messy, serendipitous, mysterious process, because we never bring things together that are far apart, right? It only appears that way when other people do it, which means there's nothing creative about creativity, right? It's only creative from the outside. When someone you see pulling two things that are far apart together, for them, they sit right next to each other. It's just that their space of possibility is different because their assumptions, their biases, their history is different. For them, they're just taking small steps. They're just changing their space of possibility around them by the questions they ask.